like the commitment in the offseason, there couldn't be anything further from the truth, but that seems to be the perception.
Is that like an outside of Nebraska narrative? Because
I don't know. You
I
should
don't
enjoy
sense that
you
in the
peruse
state
message
here.
boards in our stream
Okay.
because
Okay,
our
well,
our chat is just out of control.
it does not take. Yeah, I'm glad you prefaced that by saying I know the family. I talked to Dylan's mom on the field before the game, and it was a different vibe for the Raiolas at Minnesota because Dom stayed home.
Yeah, he was
Dayton
back.
had a game. Dayton had a game, so Dom was back in Georgia. They were split up for the weekend, and usually they're all able to all be together. But Taylor and Yvonne were there, and so yeah, I mean, I think like I say that because I know them and what they are, what they represent when it comes to learning and just their approach to the game of football. Like the whole family, it isn't just Dom and Dylan and Dayton. Like it's all of them. It's a insult to say that Taylor and Yvonne, who were there to support Dylan on Friday, like are not just as invested and as much a part of what goes into his preparation and his coachability as his dad, who played 14 years in the NFL. They absolutely are huge part of his makeup. And it couldn't be further from the truth to say it's like the exact opposite of that. He wants to be coached hard. He's hard on himself. You see him do all of the right things off the field when it comes to accepting responsibility and acting like a pro through every moment of
his body, get
yeah.
the body fat, like everything.
Yeah, if that's who you are and that's the way you approach the game, then I think it goes without saying that you want to be coached hard and you're open to criticism. You're open to all kinds of methods to improve your game. Like just because we don't see it like in a linear way, like every single week, it's a little bit better. Like it's just not natural in how the game works. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be moments where it looks like it's disjointed, and we saw some of that. Like we saw a lot of really good at points in the Maryland game, and then there was not much about anything that happened for Nebraska, outside of, including the quarterback play, and outside of it, there was not much of anything about that Minnesota game that you can take away and say that was a step forward. It was just one of those nights where everything went the wrong way.
Yeah, Mitch, have you been taken aback at all by sort of the things that Nebraska fans have chosen to focus on? It's not an indictment. To me, I walked away from that be like, oh man, they were bad everywhere. Like that was just my takeaway. And it seems like the focus outside has been they were bad in like one or two very specific areas that make us particularly frustrated. And not like I walked away just being like, oh, nobody played well. That was just a whole other thing, not oh no, the offense is broken, or oh no, the defense is broken. I was just like, oh, they just didn't show.
Yeah. I mean, there are areas that stick out because Minnesota's never had a game with 9 sacks, and I still don't have any confirmation 100% on this, but I don't think Nebraska's ever had a game where it allowed 9 sacks. So if it has, it's been like once. Like it doesn't matter. It was an anomaly. It was maybe not even an anomaly. It was like because this team had a game this year where it gave up 7 sacks. So it was the worst of a few bad moments with the pass rush, the pass protection this year. I walked away from it the same way as you, just thinking it snowballed on Nebraska, and it's going to have to be something that you can't just flush it right away. And I think you've seen that from the team this week. And maybe some of that is brought on by our view of seeing them for me, I see them in press conferences, not in team meetings and practice and all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And I don't know if the press conferences have been representative of what's happening behind the scenes. Probably not. I think they move forward a little more quickly than it's looked like on the outside. Like they had to get that out of their system on Sunday. And I think they did, and then they've been asked about it. And to their credit, like they've stepped up and answered the questions. Like Matt Rhule set the tone on Monday by going as deep as he did. He didn't have to go that deep, but that's what he does in his Monday session with the media. And then the players and the coordinators yesterday were really on the hot seat. Like they had, if Rhule's going to do that, then they had to step up and respond to the stuff that he said. There were so many questions asked of the players and coordinators yesterday that were directly related to comments that Rhule made on Monday. Like there was no way around it. They couldn't just turn the page. Now we're at Wednesday, and I think everybody can just start to move forward, outside, inside. But I think inside, for the most part, they probably did that on Sunday, and that's good because it was such a bad night that if you like live in that for 72 hours, 96 hours after, then you're not setting yourself up to rebound this Saturday.
Mitch, it seems like a lot of us, and I was a little taken aback, and I shouldn't be, but I do get a little defensive when things are taken out of context. It's not like I've had a talk show for 20 years, but were you a little taken aback at people not understanding the context in which Coach Butler was answering a follow-up question? And would you like to set the stage for Coach Butler's answer about why he got away or got spooked in Taylor's long run?
Well, Rhule came out and said on Monday that he thought the defensive game plan was a little too vanilla for him. And Butler had to go in, whether he went into Tuesday knowing he was going to get asked about that or not, and I'm sure he did, because like Holgorsen, he was fully aware. Holgorsen said that he sat down and watched the press conference with Rhule, which is probably a good idea if you're the offensive coordinator coming up.
Wild?
Yeah, well, I think you have to, because you need to know what you're going to get asked. Like, you don't want to look like a fool. We've had situations in the past where the offensive coordinator has been unprepared to answer a question, and it ends up becoming like a whole thing.
Well, yes and no, right? Because a lot of times, Mitch, your coaches will tell you to your face before they take the podium, right? So a lot of times you do have a general idea. Like we went through a bizarro world stretch with what you're describing. Like you just had no idea what was being said because he didn't talk to him enough.
And some of that is the job of Keith Mann and his staff too, to say, hey, media relations, you're probably going to get asked this. So, and this would be a good week for them to have beefed up that part of their repertoire. So back to Butler. He's responding to a question about an answer that Matt Rhule gave on Monday. And it's been remarkable, I guess, from my perspective, because like this is what I do is talk to these people on these press conferences. I don't know if remarkable is like quite the right word when you look at it in the big picture of football, but it's been very interesting nonetheless to see the transformation that John Butler has made from just a year ago or like 16 months ago to right now, because he was kind of scared of his own shadow when it came to how to answer questions from the media when he got to Nebraska. And that's a direct result of the NFL mentality and who he worked for. And I have not studied Sean McDermott. I don't know like what he's like with the media and the public, but in talking to my coworker who covers the Bills and got to know Butler a little bit after he quit his job as secondary coach, I was told, wow, like there's a lot there with that guy. He's a really interesting guy, but we never got to see that as a coach because they had been conditioned in that organization to basically not say anything. So he's gone from that, and that's where he started. That was like the baseline at Nebraska, where he came out and it was uncomfortable. It was awkward. Like he didn't know, like, am I supposed to talk here? Am I supposed to like really give insight? To the place where he was at on Tuesday and he called himself a sheep. He's like, I'm not, sometimes we have sheep moments. And then he also said, I don't back down from a fight, but like for him to like publicly acknowledge that he had this moment where he was acting like a sheep, and I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth, but like he used that phrase. What is really interesting to see, and it shows a lot of growth on his part. So if he's experiencing that same kind of growth in like all areas of his experience at Nebraska, then like that bodes well for the defense, and like you want to have patience with this guy because he's going to figure it out.
And you and I, behind the scenes, had this very conversation in Indianapolis 2 years ago. Do you remember?
About Butler?
Yes. And
no.
Well,
he had just arrived.
Yeah, coming out of the media.
Yeah,
dealing with the media.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of how it was going to be hard to get into the trust level of how he was covered in the media. You remember that conversation now?
I remember talking about that.
Yeah. So I said to Ravi this morning, I said I didn't mean to sound defensive of Butler, but I do think I was bothered by the fact we took his answer out of context. Like we weren't mature enough to handle somebody just being authentic and taking some self-eval, which 85% of us aren't really willing to do. He put it out there, and then we turn around and we use it against him as if none of us have ever had the course of our day changed at our job by an event that's happened. Right?
Most of us probably wouldn't admit the things that he admitted. He didn't need to say that he got vanilla, he didn't need to say specifically in what way he got vanilla. He did not need to say, I overreacted to the run from Darius Taylor. Like that's above and beyond, I think, what maybe even Rhule thought he would do. And Rhule, I think whether it was intentional or it's just kind of inherent in what he does and how he answers questions and the way that he wants his coaches to have to also face the music. He set all these guys up on Tuesday, be it the players and especially the coordinators. He set them all up to have to answer some hard questions, to have to talk about entitlement if you're the players, who all got asked about that. And, there were a variety of answers there. And the coordinators to specifically get into parts of their game plan that he criticized on Monday. So that's what he wants. That's like ultimately what Rhule wants, to put people in uncomfortable situations, because that is what leads to growth and self-improvement.
I thought it was interesting, when we kind of take those comments, and it was a follow-up to the question too with Butler. We're kind of leaving out, but it's almost like we've never, you ever have a bad interaction with a customer, it sets the tone for the day, right? You have a bad interaction with a student or a parent calls, it sets the tone for the rest of the day. Schedules happen in court, it can set the tone for the rest of the day. We just don't say, well, hey, my schedule from my legal sec, it set me back 2 hours and it screwed. He just said it, and then it's like, I can't believe this middle school guy is coaching our. Like, really, guys? Like, how do we lack the perspective of somebody just knowing and telling us what the issue was? Like, wouldn't we want to know? I wouldn't use it against him. I'd be encouraged by it.
I'd rather know that he knows what the problem was.
You know what? Does that make sense, or is that? I don't know.
Well, the only thing I'd say here is, fortunately, I don't live in too much. I probably should do more in like the cesspool of like what's being said by like the lowest common denominator of fan intelligence and fan understanding. You see some of that on social media.
I didn't say that.
Well, I don't know where all this stuff's coming from. Like, John Butler's
right.
a middle school coach, and Dylan
cesspool.
Raiola doesn't take coaching well. Like, this is news to me. I'm not hearing the. I'm not hearing.
You got to do this every day.
Yeah, right. I'm not hosting a talk show and like looking in the chat comments, and fortunately for my sanity, like I can try to, and sometimes I fail because I look at I have comments on my stories or on our YouTube podcast the same as you do, and I kind of try to stay away from it because most of it is, not most of it. Like there's a lot of smart fans out there, of course. Like Nebraska has some of the smartest fans in all of college sports. But like you can get pretty deep into the mud too. And for me, I think like I hope that's where that stuff is coming from with the criticism of Butler for making the You can criticize John Butler all you want for like how he called that game, but to criticize him for the way that he answered that question yesterday, no. And like the stuff with Dylan too, he takes coaching well. Like that, talk to from John Kitna, who was his coach as a freshman in high school in Texas, all the way on up to everyone who's had a hand in working with that guy, and you'll hear nothing but that.
Sam, I think that sometimes, Mitch, I maybe overcorrect when I listen to these press conferences because I was so annoyed, is I think the nicest way I can put it, about the previous staff who didn't feel like they gave you anything, didn't feel like they took accountability publicly for anything. That when I hear Butler say, "Oh, I was a little sheepish," or however he phrased it, like I'm all for it, right? I'm just like, tell me everything. Like I would rather know that you at least are aware of what's happening, because if you don't give me anything and then it still looks like it does on the certain way on the field, I'm left with the assumption that you don't know.
You would hope that they do.
You would hope so, but like you're not saying it and I'm not seeing it. What am I left to believe, right?
Most of these guys didn't just like trip and fall into these jobs. Like they've even on the staffs that ultimately failed and fell apart for whatever reason, like they knew football and they understood what was happening. In a lot of instances, though, and it's always a reflection of the head coach. In a lot of instances, they just don't want to give you anything. I mean, you know that. I'm not saying it's, and that's what it is here with Rhule, because Rhule's approach to this, whether it's through his Monday sessions with the media or his podcast or his Pat McAfee interviews, or going back in front of the media on Thursdays and back in front of the media on Saturdays and whatever else he decides to do, like he's all about letting people in and letting them, see how the sausage is made. He talks about it all the time, about how he loves NFL films. And he had this epiphany that, hey, if that's what he likes when he consumes football, then he ought to just give it to the fans too, who are the ones that allow him to do this job. So the assistant coaches and to some degree the players, like they feed off of that energy, and that's why you see John Butler having this transformation where he goes from not saying anything to saying, you might say, dare we say, I won't say it, but too much on Tuesday.
That is our guy, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, great stuff as always. We appreciate the time and hope we have a less cesspool-y fan base this weekend.
Pretty good that it's at 11, right? Get it out of the way early. Let's get this thing cracking. These guys got to be pretty pissy.
I'm sure they'd play today if they could.
I mean, that's what you want.
You're probably right. Mitch, great stuff. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.